The second season of The Rings of Power, the most expensive series of all time so far, is now over, and it's damn difficult to write anything about it, especially when there are still 3 seasons to follow and you can't see any real direction yet. The first season had a tough start, but the production budget was clearly visible in the many settings, costumes, buildings, or landscapes. However, the story about 2 strangers, one probably good, one evil, also had many weaknesses in the structure, the actual plot, and the arc of suspense. At least the basic world building was convincing apart from that. But is that a surprise with all that money? So that, like Beautiful Pictures, were the least that could be expected. And so, after 8 episodes and 9 hours, there was very little plot told. Mordor was created, a good wizard, and the evil Sauron stranded in Middle-earth, and the dwarves discovered mithril silver. I gave it 3 to 3.5 benevolent stars on a 5-star scale. The second season now started right at the end of the first. Sauron deceives the elven blacksmith Celebrimbor and forges all the rings one after the other with him. Adar, leader of the orcs, then wants to take possession of them. The dwarf king succumbs to greed through his ring. Numenor disintegrates internally, and in the end everyone meets on a battlefield and searches for the main plot together with the spectators who sit questioningly in front of their monitor, because apart from forging it is not visible, and many important characters from the first season have become pure side notes, walking through the desert or falling in love behind the scenes. The viewer sees nothing of all this. The big magician's test, the evil magician, the couples in love, but is allowed to listen to endless dialogues about the same things over and over again. For example, that Celebrimbor should continue to forge. It's not exciting and productive. Everyone knows where it will ultimately lead to. So, to the fact that the rings are forged. It's shameful that neither an overall made-up plot was found here, nor did the introduced characters get enough to do, and only at the end everyone says hello to the camera again, wants to remind us that they are still there. All the more so because much of that was new in the first season and is no longer so. Dwarfs in the mountains, the elves, Gruffs, Numenor, the orcs, all seen before. The Halfwood in the desert and the Dark Magician in the wasteland. These were the new elements, so real new show values were in short supply. Former main characters like the White Wizard Nori or Galadriel no longer got a leading role, sit in the hut or in the prison wagon, have nothing to do, and remind one that no one watches over the series, and really builds the whole plot first, distributes it over the seasons and episodes in order to be able to unfold a real exciting plot for everyone, as would be expected for a competent series production. In addition, there are dialogues from the hell of screenwriters, the complete, deliberate refusal of epic scenes, complete inability to tell a clearly recognizable battle or a final scene that everything leads to dominates. All this was shipwrecked in a frighteningly amateurish way and staged as an anti-climax, as if you didn't want to show anything but talking heads who always say the same things for 8 episodes and almost 9 hours. On the other hand, I watched the first Fallout series episode. The difference is all the more striking. Despite the same length, the world building succeeds there. You have the feeling of being pushed into a functional system. People only talk when they have something to say, and pictures tell the majority of the story, while here it is mainly built on the fact that meaningless talking about something being exciting is supposed to bring this tension, and not the showing of it, what you talk about, nor the way to get there. If the first 2 episodes are still an acceptable sequel, this crumbles at the latest with the third and especially the last 3, some of which already have amateurish productions and are only saved by the immense budget, which, as mentioned, is no longer as effective as before and cannot fill the big fundamental flaws per se. Above all, that no one knows what all this is leading to, what interesting stories are, that they are also shown and not just the results, and that people make an effort in all things instead of just cranking everything down for content. Because the story told here is also not very interesting, and somehow much less epic than once expected. Once it sounded as if the rings were gradually taking over their wearers. Now you can immediately see the effects on the Dwarf King, and everyone knows that they are evil. No slow discovery, no awakening, no surprise. These things are bad to the bone, and the only very lame suspense would be how anyone can still believe that they are good, or how one can make one believe this. In the episode reviews, I told more about the individual things like plot holes, strange plots, and the slow-paced narrative. Especially the latter tires the viewer extremely, because it's like driving a car with the brakes pressed down. The barely recognizable story could easily be cut more than 3 hours without losing content of any kind, and then still one wouldn't get a good, exciting series. But at least it would all be less stretched and tiring. The most important question now is, will the series be continued? There has not yet been a green light, and although this is a prestige project where one cannot afford to exit now, that is, without a real ending, this makes one think. Were not enough people watching after all? Have too many viewers gradually dropped out? Will the urgently needed changes finally be made, and better writers, better showrunners will be brought on board? Someone who really cares about the whole thing, or who at least wants to make a good series. This would be urgently needed, because although there is always talk about 5 seasons, what is offered here after 16 episodes is actually not even enough for half of it so far, and it can't go on like this in the future. At least I was just bored in the end, and the end of the season was forever in coming. One long-winded ending scene followed the other, and then everything started all over again. I have to correct the benevolent rating from season 1 downwards, and the second season gets an even benevolent 2.5 to 3 stars from me. Simply because I still have some hope, although I can clearly say that I would definitely never watch the second season again, and I can honestly recommend it to anyone. Everything is simply too weak in terms of staging, and Amazon really has to work on the cornerstones here to get the franchise back on track. For Lord of the Rings, for fantasy films and series in general, I would like to see that. Although I fear that any changes will come much too late, and that the current waters are incredibly difficult to leave. It's not impossible, but it would only be radically feasible, and that would affect an important part of the team and the narrative. Unfortunately, in the end, that's the most exciting thing about the whole series. Whether they will be able to save it from the sea of tears, of desolation. Stay tuned for more series, movies, and rankings coming here on this channel, including the Star Wars movies list and the worst movie I could find on Amazon.